Sir.
Have you been able to do anything about our insane laws about guns in this country?
Yes, as a non-profit, we cannot take political positions because it will undermine our 501c3 status because we are donor-based, because we don't fund prevention. So most of the donors are given a tax break. And I made a decision early in life to bring the programs for free because the schools we go to don't have money for basic needs. They're very violent, and you saw how many hands went up when I asked how many of you have lost family members. Do you remember seeing that video? The first time I asked that, 2/3 of the hands went up. I thought, my God, 6th graders. So personally, I do speak against gun laws. As an American citizen, I can do that. And to that extent, I have spoken against the death penalty and against saner gun laws, which we are desperately need. We can learn from our neighbors in Canada or Australia. 300 million guns for 280 million people in America. And they're so easily acceptable. And I don't have problems with people that want to hunt. But you can buy a 20 midnight special for $20. It's made in China, because everything is made in China now. It's made for this market. It's not safe for the shooter, obviously not safe for the person being shot. So we gotta cut this too. So yes, absolutely, I'm totally in favor of getting some saner gun laws. Yes.
Christopher's mom able to forgive Tony Williams?
Yes, all my family has. Tony's mom, Tari grew up in Seattle, and my daughter went to University of Washington in Seattle, and her degree is in sociology, and her emphasis was juvenile delinquents. And when she graduated, my son was alive. So life works. God works in mysterious ways. So 3 years after the foundation, she came down from Seattle to San Diego to start and work at the foundation. And she ran the foundation for 6 years. And in 2004, she resigned on staff. She sold her board to start her own family. And I have 3 beautiful grandchildren. 2 grandsons, and my granddaughter is 9 months old. Who just was born. And when my first grandson was born, my ex has since moved from Seattle to Vista. She's a teacher at Montessori. So sometimes if I am not available and I'm traveling and we're speaking at a school, I'll call her and then she'll go give our testimony. But all my family has. They've all met twice, as I met all of his family. Not all of them have met Tony. But someday hopefully they will meet him. Yes?
How did you feel the day you committed to forgive Mr. Mann? How did you feel on the very same day?
It did start there. What happened to me is I got a call from homicide to tell me that Tariq had been shot and killed. I'd just come back from a trip from Mexico City. And my first inclination was, unbelievable. It didn't make any sense to me that he would be shot and killed. So I thought I made a mistake. So I didn't talk to them very long. I hung up on him and very quickly dialed his number, fully expecting him to pick up the phone. Of course he didn't. His girlfriend Jennifer did. And she couldn't say it. There. And I remember falling on the floor, hit in the kitchen. I was in the kitchen, hit my head against the refrigerator. And I don't have the words to describe to you how excruciating painful that was. I've never felt pain like that. I talk about like a bomb going off in your heart. And I had my first out-of-body experience. I left my body. I couldn't be in it. And I read that a lot of trauma victims, women that get raped, leave their body because they cannot be in it. I get that now because I had that experience. And I believe in God. I believe I left my body and went into an embrace. And he held me in an embrace for a very long time. And when the explosion subsided, he sent me to my body with the wisdom that there are victims at both ends of the gun. Hour and a half after I found out, I lived by myself. my best friend Dan and his wife Kit were with me. Because my family at that time didn't live there. Mostly they lived in Seattle and Vancouver. And Dan and I are alone. And Dan looks at me and says, whoever these kids are that murdered Tariq, I hope they fry in hell. And I looked at him and I said, I don't feel that way. I see that there are victims at both ends of the gun. And he broke down and cried because they have a son called Adam. He said, listen, where do you get this from? Somebody told Adam's like, not only would I want the killer, I want the whole clan. So it didn't come from my intellect. It did not come from my heart. It came from a higher power. That's about social leadership. That if I did not have that spiritual foundation, I would not have had that level of empathy to say there are victims on both ends of the gun. It takes a lot of empathy. The precursor to forgiveness is compassion. The precursor to compassion is empathy. So you can develop that high level of empathy. Because they're all mortals, none of us is perfect. Then you can go down this journey. So that afterwards led me to forgiveness, because once I figured he was a victim as well, and then I really found out how big a victim he was, because once you get to know his story, then you can have that empathy, because you can't have empathy for somebody you don't know. This is why it was Cold War. We never knew the Russians and all that. But if you come to know the person on the other side, which is why I really think conflict is a wonderful opportunity to create, to create unity instead of more conflict. Yes?
How could we help in your organization?
But
How could we help you in your
how can you help us? Well, you can help us in many ways. One of the things we love is to see if you are able to become a Seeds of Hope Society member. So what that means is that we live on donations. We created 3 levels. To help a classroom, you give $1,000 a year, and you make a 5-year commitment. It's a latte a day. So don't give your latte, buy one for a kid, and we'll do the work. If you can give more money, you can help us. A school, you give $5,000 a year. And it's like taking a kid to lunch every day. And if you can do more, you give $10,000 a year, you help a community. It's like taking a kid to dinner. I have 600 people now that give me anywhere from $1,000 to $10,000 a year. So that's about a third of my budget. The other third of my budget comes from private foundations. The other one comes from public foundations. We also are looking for people to work on several committees in the foundation. We have a development committee, a fundraising committee, a audit committee, a marketing committee, a strategic planning committee. Also, we're looking for some qualified board members. We're also trying to expand. And we're also we're based in San Diego, so we don't have a program in Orange County. But if you live in San Diego, any of you, we would love to see you get involved at the volunteer level. TKF.org is our website, TKF.org, Tariq Khamisa Foundation. And if you meet me afterwards, I'll be happy to give you a business card. Yes?
What advice would you give parents to prevent kids from going that direction?
Good question. I think that we do a whole program at the foundation with parents, because we find that many parents do not know that their kids are gang involved. And there are signs all over but not paying attention. It's self-available once they understand that. And the second thing is the critical hours are very important from the time school gets out to the parents get home, 3 to 6. It's very important to keep the kids in a place where you know where they are, that they are productively involved in something, sports or some kind of an after-school program, and that you connect with the teachers or the program people, because a lot of problems happen in that level. So parenting, toughest job on the planet, and if you're a parent, you kind of get that. But a lot of parents are not as involved, and even Ples will tell you that he tried to keep Tony involved, but he could have done more to make sure that he was more. He had no clue when he was in a gang. ask him, what would you have done differently, he would probably tell you what I just told you. Yes,
You know, you talk about spirituality.
yes.
And what is your foundation doing to promote that? Because part of what's missing in a lot of families today, especially in inner cities, is the family.
Yes.
The parents being involved. And I think with the move to eliminate and remove spirituality from schools, from all the teachings, I think that's hurting our society, and it's taking that, it's creating a more logical society that makes decisions that are illogical rather than having spirituality as led by God.
Absolutely. There was a good joke I read. Somebody asked God, why aren't you in our schools? And he said, because I'm not invited over there. It's hard to get spirituality into schools because it's against our laws. We do backdoor spirituality into it because we teach meditation as an anger management tool. There's no way that you meditate and not connect with God or the Spirit. We don't call it that. Now, in the Connect program, which is with offenders, there are 3 pillars. The first is spirituality. There we go to many ends. We have people that come from all faiths and wisdom traditions to talk to kids about spirituality. We use inspirational movies like Gandhi and Schindler's List. We use inspirational music. We do trips in nature. We meditate. We do yoga. I teach kids that you have this internal navigation system. The kid that killed my son was under orders from the 18-year-old gang leader, busting bones. He had an external navigation system. If you're connected to your internal navigation system, to your spirit, well, you know it's wrong to lie, to cheat, to steal, to kill somebody. You don't be taught that it's in you. So we go beyond to do rituals, to get these kids to understand that they have within them this tremendous resource that can guide them. The other 2 pillars are restorative justice, which is what I talked about a little bit, which is I'm using this in a corporate one as well. When we get the kids to take responsibility for their actions, ask forgiveness of people they've hurt, forgive themselves because they are young, but they have to redeem. They have to go back out there and help another kid not make the same mistake. And many of them find their vocation to their avocation. I've had dozens of kids that went to the Connect program that are first time in their family's history going to college. And our third pillar is literacy. Spend 2.5 hours a day on reading, writing, and arithmetic. Everything they read reinforces the spiritual pillar or the restorative justice pillar. If they write like you would a journal. Who am I? Why am I here? What's my purpose? Stuff you and I grapple with. When you're solution-based, tell them, okay, they all have issues because they've all been victims. So we tell them, okay, write about your issues, but also write about what help you need, because it's our job to make sure you get all the help you need so you can go back out there in society and be a functioning, contributing member. The redemption piece is very, very key. And in arithmetic, we basically do addition, multiplication, subtraction, and addition, because we can count. I tell the kids, you don't learn to read and write. You read and write so you can learn. So we get up to 9th grade level, and then they're like Tony, reading 5 books a month, and want to do college, and they just keep going. Because once they can, because these kids can't read. They're 17, 18 years old. And when they write, they write very, spelling mistakes. And, so we really spend a lot of time in trying to get them to be able to read and write so that they can excel. He was a great kid, very humorous, charismatic, lots of friends, good writer, great photographer, and a dream to work for National Geographic someday, and a beautiful girlfriend, Jennifer, and just gotten engaged 6 weeks before he died. And it was a routine, it was a random thing. He worked Fridays and Saturdays as a pizza delivery man for a local restaurant, not far from where he went to school. It was his turn to deliver. So he jumped in his Volkswagen, and he was lured to an apartment building with a bogus apartment number. He knocked on many doors, and he found out that nobody ordered the pizza, so he came back to his car, he put the pizzas in the trunk of his car, he climbed into the driver's side seat, and as he's about to leave the scene of the crime, he was accosted by 4 youth gang members. And an 18-year-old handed a 9mm handgun to a 14-year-old, and as my son is trying to back away from the driver, he gave the order, "Bust him, Bones." Bones was his gang nickname, and he fired 1 round, which came through the driver's side window. It entered my son's body right here under the left shoulder blade, traveled across the upper part of his chest, and the bullet actually exited from his right armpit. But as the coroner explained to me afterwards, he said the bullet followed a perfect path. A perfect path, I queried. I thought that was an interesting choice of words. And he said to me, "Mr. Kamisa, I'm not trying to be insensitive. In our lingo, what that meant is that the bullet destroyed all the vital organs in your son's body. And Tariq died, drowning in his own blood, a couple of minutes later, over a lousy pizza at the age of 20. The sudden, senseless death of an innocent, unarmed human being. The overwhelming grief of a family. The total confusion as you try to absorb a new, hideous reality. And although it was 17 years ago, it doesn't feel like that. It feels like it happened yesterday. And I don't know what's more complicated for a parent than to lose a child. And I've been there, I would put my body between the bullet, and yeah, this is something you do instinctively. And as I shared on the video, those early days were very difficult. But I have survived the tragedy. And it also changed the way I live, the work that I do. I know that this group is about next level by association. Well, I had to really figure out how to live without my son. Talk about next level. This felt like crossing a chasm, that you had to take a leap. And I remember I've written 4 books, 3 of them are out. The 4th one will be out later this year. It's called The Roadmap to Peace. And I remember I've been an active, I write a journal on an active basis, and I remember putting this quote in my journal 6 months after Tariq had died. There's nothing quite so painful as a broken heart. There's nothing quite so painful as a broken heart. But a broken heart is an open heart. If one can learn to live with an open heart, gentle transformations begin to happen. And I think it is very important. I know many hearts have been broken. But as I talk around the world, I always try and say that my job here is to take a broken heart and make it into an open heart. And one of my goals here tonight is to open your hearts. So I truly believe if there was enough of us out there with open hearts, we wouldn't be in the state of affairs we are today. We are so quick to close our hearts. We're so quick to judge by how people look or their race or their faith. An open heart does not do that. Because an open heart works from a different space. Because an open heart can freely transmit and receive love. I remember when I talked in Kalamazoo, Michigan, it's only about 8, 9 years ago, and I was talking to a group of parents that had just lost children. And I started with this quote, and I just shared with you, and a fellow came up to me afterwards and said, I was really touched by your opening quote. It reminded me of a quote by Rumi. I'm sure some of you have read Rumi. I know this is an enlightened group here. And I'm a Sufi, as Rumi was. I practice as a Sufi Muslim. I was born that way. And I said, so he said to me, he says, since you are a Sufi as well, I'm sure you know this quote by Rumi. And I said, well, Rumi was very prolific. He wrote 138,000 quotes. While I know several of them, I don't remember all of them. So please share with me what Rumi said. And he says, Rumi said, God will break your heart over and over and over and over and over and over and over again until it stays open. That's why I said, wow. So one way not to have your heart broken is to make sure it is open. Thank you. So, I took a little different response to this tragedy than maybe a lot of other people would have. I saw that there were victims at both ends of the gun. That was never quoted before, and now we've had a tremendous amount of publicity, as Bob talked about in my introductions, and they always quote that word. So I saw that my son was a victim of a 14-year-old gang member. I saw the 14-year-old gang member as a victim of society, of American society. So that begs the question, well, who is American society? I don't believe that society is just happenstance. I think every one of us who is an American is responsible for the society we've created. And I am a first-generation American, a naturalized American citizen, but I am an American. And I'm proud to be American. I love my country, and I know all of you do. And I had lived here for 20 years because Tariq actually was born here when I moved here. But my first impression after Tariq died was, I should leave and move to England, where I spent 6 years as a college student. So I needed to be in an English-speaking country. And that was my first knee-jerk reaction. I made a big mistake to come to the United States. But then I realized that having lived here for 20 years, my love for this country was much stronger than my rage, because we do have a lot of good things in America. And I also realized that wherever I lived, I could not just sweep this under the rug. How do you do that? Well, I had to stay, and I had to fight. And the statistics of youth violence are pretty horrific in our country. I'm sure you read the same newspapers and TV shows as I do. It's the second biggest reason we lose young souls. The first is auto accidents. 75 kids get shot every day. 16 die, the rest are in wheelchairs. If that was not a travesty, another 200 plus kids are arrested for violent crime where there is a weapon involved. I'm talking every single day. Kids, ages 13 through 18. We are by far the most violent first world nation in the world. The Economist did a study of, they took 25 countries in the world. I'm talking about first world countries like Australia, Canada, Japan, Germany, England, France. First world countries like ours. They took all the kids that died in those 25 countries, they took the total and multiplied that by 11. That is how many we lose in the United States of America. And that is a big problem, my sisters and brothers. Why? Because we are the only superpower in the world, although that is shifting now. But right now, we have a tremendous impact on the global culture. If you travel overseas, what do you see? Starbucks, KFC, Walmart, Levi's, American music, SUVs, American movies. What happens in the United States of America eventually happens in the world. While we are exporting some of the good stuff in this country, like a free, democratic, meritocratic society, unfortunately, we are also exporting our violence. Recently, you saw what happened in Norway. 77 people died. And Norway is not a violent country. Happened here, people will say, well, that's normal. Well, it's not normal. Children killing children is not a mark of a civil society. So, 9 months after Tariq died, I decided to start the Tariq Khamisa Foundation. Our mission statement is to stop kids from killing kids by breaking the cycle of youth violence. Essentially, there are 3 mandates. First and foremost is to save lives of children. It doesn't have to be your child that died. If a child dies in any community, I believe they're all diminished. Our second mandate is to empower the right choices so kids don't end up in gangs, guns, and violence for the wrong reasons. And our third is to teach the principles of nonviolence, of empathy, of compassion, of peacemaking. And I started with a very simple premise, that violence is a learned behavior. No child was born violent, and unfortunately, most of them learn violence from us adults. They see how we deal with conflict. So I believe that if violence can be a learned behavior, then non-violence can also be a learned behavior, but you have to teach it. And we teach it through our story. And I started the foundation in my home office, 9 months after I died, with $8,000. With the grace of God, fast forward 17 years, we have over 50 employees. We are a worldwide known organization in teaching these principles of nonviolence and peacemaking. We are successfully taking schools that are unsafe and dangerous and making them safe. So we are demonstrating that this is possible. I also founded another organization, which is in its 11th year, with an organization which is 32 years old. They asked me to develop a program for violent youth, because the foundation is a prevention program. While keeping kids, grade school based, keeping kids away from gang guns and violence. But what about the kids that are already gang involved? So we are in the 11th year. I started a program called CANI, which is constant and never-ending improvement. Constant and never-ending improvement. You probably heard this came from Charles Denny. I'm better tomorrow than I'm today. I'm better the day after tomorrow than I am tomorrow. It's a good mantra for offenders, because we don't want them to regress. We want them to progress. Actually, it's a good mantra for all of us. It's probably what Next Level teaches, right? Constant and never-ending improvement, right? So, with the grace of God, that particular program has done really well. We're already in 7 cities in 10 years. And I'm meeting with Sheriff Baca in LA tomorrow. This is my 4th meeting with him to bring the Connect program to LA. And maybe we'll do it in Orange County. Now, you may not know this, but to incarcerate a youth for 1 year costs $200,000. $200,000. Not cheaper to send them to Harvard or an Ivy League school. Now, here's the other shocking thing, okay? After spending $200,000, the recidivism rate is 86%. The CANI program is a 6-month program, costs $20,000. And over the last 4 years' results, and we just looked at the 4th quarter, we made a conference call this morning about our results. Over a 4-year period, the recidivism rate is under 30%. The cost is $20,000. You don't have to be an investment banker to know it's a good deal. So I'm very excited about showing that, I mean, look at Tony. I didn't meet him. I met the grandfather 9 months. It took me 5 years to go see Tony. And I think it takes a lot of courage and fortitude to come eyeball to eyeball with a person who murdered your son. And he was the first 14-year-old to be tried as an adult. Now, it took them almost 2 years to figure out whether he should be tried as an adult or as a juvenile. And as you remember, I started the foundation 9 months after Tariq passed away. So he already knew that I'd forgiven him. I was working with his grandfather. And one of the fellows that helped me start the foundation, his name is Mike Reynolds, interviewed Tony 22 times between the time that I started the foundation and the time he was tried as an adult. And Tony stayed in the bravado, and everybody was stupid, his grandfather, the DA, the pizza delivery man, and then something happened to him the day before his hearing. And he gave a speech, and you saw some of it on that video, where at that speech he said, I shot and killed Tariq Khamisa, a person I did not know who was not doing anything wrong to me. Now that never happens, does it? When the judge asks, how do you plead, guilty or not guilty, what do they say?
No.
99.9%. Well, he didn't say that. He said, I am guilty. I pray to God that Mr. Khamisa would forgive me for the harm I caused him. You heard him say that? I already forgiven him, but the fact that he asked for my help made me feel better. Because I felt that Tariq did not die in vain. And that never happens. He waived his right to the trial because this was a hearing to see if he should be tried as an adult or as a juvenile. It was not a trial. Now in California, if you get a conviction of a murder, if you get convicted as a murderer, you automatically get a retrial. He waived his right to the retrial. That saved us California taxpayers millions of dollars because these lawsuits are extremely expensive. But forget that. 5 years after, I met him. I told Place, I went with the grandfather because I'd known him. I met him 9 months. I told Place, I said, I need some alone time with Tony because he was the last person to see my son. And there were some empty pieces in the story that I needed to complete. And he did complete them for me. And I remember, we had like an hour and a half, and I was, sitting as close to him as I am to you. Standing in front of me, we were sitting around a coffee table. And I remember locking eyes with him for a very long time. And I'm trying to look in his eyes, looking for a murderer, and I didn't find that. What I saw was another soul, much like you, much like me. I was able to climb through his eyes and touch his humanity. Sure, he had killed my one and only son, but that does not make him inhuman. With the spark in him, he's no different than in all of us. And I remember in my third book, The Secrets of the Political Spirit, there's a chapter that was inspired by me meeting Tony, whose title, Realize with Real Eyes. Sometimes these are not the real eyes. Too much judgment in here. Even Christ said that, take the plank out of your eyes so you can see the speck in your brother's eye more clearly. So, what I wanted to talk about, I know a lot of you people here are in the business world, and besides spawning these two nonprofits, which are basically looking at both ends of the gun, the prevention piece and the intervention piece, this work has also spawned into me doing this work in corporations. I created a change management model with a PhD in organizational behavior. And it is essentially, how do you create hashtag performance? How do you get to the next level? how do you perform at the zenith? And it's come from my experience. And I coined this word called cellular. So that is from the word place, play on soul and the word cell. So I call this word cellular. So what I'm talking about is cellular leadership. What is cellular leadership? So mostly when you go to get yourself degrees and get your PhDs or your masters or whatever or your MBAs, the education system essentially, basically makes you more intelligent. It works on the intellectual system. And I don't care if you go from K through PhD or a double PhD. Well, in my deepest crisis, my degrees in math and finance were useless. And I went to some pretty good schools in England. What saved me was a strong spiritual foundation. This book is The Secrets of the Bulletproof Spirit. And this was published by Random House. I wanted to just, oops, sorry. I'm still in denial about reading glasses. Some of you know how I feel. It was fine till a year ago. When life deals you a particularly difficult blow or a staggering loss, how do you handle it? If you're like most, you might think, why me? Or struggle to find your way, or even lash out at those around you. But there are a select few who seem emotionally hardier, who are able to face life's physical, emotional, and financial hits undeterred and perhaps even forged ahead, empowered in the face of adversity. These people are not more deserving or luckier than the rest of us. They simply think differently. They're connected with a steady inner self and find strength where others might see meaninglessness. They make life-affirming choices instead of defeatist ones. In short, they are spiritually bulletproof. They face as many of life's slings and arrows as the rest of us, but they don't succumb to hardship or misfortune, and you can be one of them. So the point I'm trying to make is everybody has a bulletproof spirit, because you can't kill a spirit. You can't burn it, you can't let it. Here's Einstein. We must take care not to make intellect our God. Sure, it has powerful muscles, but no personality. It cannot lead, it can only serve. How many of us lead from the intellect? Well, let me tell you something. In life, you're going to get problems that your intellect is not going to be able to solve. And I don't care how well educated you are. The more educated you are, the more problems you have. I have a good friend that says, a mind is a dangerous place to go by yourself. Because it will justify anything. Maybe Hitler killed 6 million Jews. Well, he didn't kill them. The people that killed him, Jews, were MDs and PhDs. Now, an MD is trained not to kill somebody, right? To save lives. But there's the intellect for you. In life, you're going to get problems that your hearts are not going to be able to heal. Emotions live in the heart, but there's no rudder in the heart. How often do we get carried away by our emotions? Especially when you're teenagers. Well, we adults do it too, right? Think about the last time you got carried away by your emotions. So then where are you? You have problems you can't face with your intellect, you have problems with asking the language, where are you? But what I've learned in my journey, by the same token, there are no problems, and I want to repeat it, there are no problem that you're going to get in your life that your spirit cannot solve or heal. And I am a living testament of that axiom. And I was lucky. My mom was very spiritual, my dad was a businessman. I grew with equal emphasis on my spiritual life and my career. They were both equally important. Even today, if I'm reading a business book, I'm reading a spiritual book. When I was 20, I met one of my mom's cronies who taught me how to meditate. I used to meditate 1 hour a day when my son was alive. Today my practice is 2 hours a day. And I've got so much into meditation that I've studied all the methods. I actually created my own, and it is a free download on my website. For those of you who want to get into meditation, I have a preamble of how I meditate. I meditate 3 different times during the day. I do different things at different times. And then I have 2 guided meditations. One is on forgiveness, because I teach forgiveness. I have a 2.5-day training program, Train the Trainer program. And I've trained over 200 people now. A lot of them are PhDs and MDs and MSWs in Canada, USA, and Australia that are using this work. And so one of my guided meditation is on forgiveness. The other one is on manifesting your goals, manifesting the next level, if you like. And you're welcome to download and look at it. And I can tell you that when Tariq died, I could not sleep, I could not eat. All my biological functions changed. The one thing that I could do is meditate. And I was doing maybe 5, 6, 7 hours in those early days. And I truly, I didn't bring spirit into my business life when my son was alive. I did meditate. I always kept my meditation and my spiritual life separate from my business life and my personal life. Now I don't. I bring spirit in everything I do. Because I've learned that this is not very reliable. This has no rudder. So we teach this. We even teach this to kids. That if you want to make an important decision, don't just make it with your intellect. Very often people are already responding to what you're saying, right? They're thinking what I'm going to say. Like Bob when he said, listen carefully and absorb this. And this is something I think very important for all of us to learn. There's nothing wrong with a good mind. I'm not knocking education. But we need to understand that the intellect is limited by itself. It's basically a computer. It's a logic device. You can do pros and cons. Does it make sense? Does it not make sense? And sure enough, if you have an important decision, go to your mind and ask the questions to see if it makes sense or if it doesn't make sense. Don't stop there. If it makes sense, go to your heart. Ask the question, does it feel right? Does it feel good? Because emotions live in the heart. Don't stop there. Because we've all done things that we thought made a lot of sense, and felt really good, and thought, why the hell did I do that? So take the third step. Go to the Spirit and say, is it inspiring? Is it inspiring? If I make this decision, will I be a good role model? Will others follow my example? And then I grant it to you that if you make a decision that makes sense, that feels good, that is inspiring, it will be a cellular leadership decision. Cellular leaders do not lead from here or from here. They lead from the Spirit. Because Spirit is, if you believe in God, which I do, you don't have to, you can call it a higher power. We all have a spirit. Spirit is compassionate. Spirit is wise. Spirit has rudder. Spirit has clarity. Spirit has lived many more lives than we have. Spirit is guiding us. But you have to connect with the Spirit. Now I do it through meditation. There are other ways to do it. And when I'm in the morning, at night when I go to sleep, Well, let me explain first of all. Meditation is when you are in the gap. The mind is a thought-making machine, right? One thought, two thoughts, it doesn't stop. But what we don't realize that between one and the second thought, there's a little gap. We don't feel it because it's infinitesimal. Meditation is to be able to make that gap wider. Even the most experienced meditators get seconds in the gap. An eighth of a second is a no time in the gap. I would say when you find the gap, and today I'm fortunate that when I meditate, I always find the gap. It is like taking a dip in the river of love, compassion, and wisdom. I get a lot of my ahas from there. So the point of meditation is to find the gap. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So if you meditate once a day, you're not going to be in the gap. Well, that took me 10 years to figure that one out. It'll save you some time. So at night when I go to sleep, I'm at a busy day, like most of everybody in America is very busy. 200 emails and phone calls and meetings and whatever, and my mind's like a million thoughts. So I look at it as a basket of apples. I empty my mind and take all the apples out. They're still on the table, but they're not in the basket. I'll try and empty my mind. And after a while, you're getting to the bottom of the basket, and you say, some more apples that you took out came back in. Now that's an important thing to look at. Because those apples that came back in are the unresolved issues in your lives. Maybe an apology, maybe you're in guilt, maybe you need to forgive somebody, maybe in a relationship. So pay attention to those that come back in. And then I go to sleep, which is essentially processing. I'm not adding anything to my mind. And I usually get up between 4 and 5 and meditate. Most of you probably don't want to do that, so that's okay. You can do 2 meditations, one when you go to sleep and one when you wake up. Now, when I meditate between 4 and 5, I usually get the gap. And I like to meditate. Well, I love to meditate. You don't have to meditate for an hour, but I just love it. I can get real time in the gap. And in the morning, I look at my day going forward. And I look at everything that I am doing, and I bring the spirit in there, and I put in there the outcomes I want to create. So my meditation today, I wanted to create some transformation and some healing in this talk that I'm doing with you this evening. So I asked the Spirit to help me do that, to promote forgiveness and to promote peace. The Dalai Lama has been, I've been very fortunate. I've been acknowledged a lot, and I've learned a lot from the Dalai Lama. And I've met him 6 times. He knows my story very well. And when I met him for the first time, I used to tell him that, I've been meditating for many years. And I remember that, and many of you are working on your spiritual lives. You probably read Eckhart Tolle, right? The Power of Now and all of that. And you find that all of Bob talked about it as to the importance of being present. There was a song, Life Happens When You're Planning Other Things. It was a song like, is it John Lennon? Was it Paul McCartney? I forget. But the point I'm trying to make is very difficult to be present, right? So you're saying, be present, be present, be present, be present. Well, how do you be present? So in my meditation, several years ago, probably 5, 6 years before I met the Dalai Lama, I got in the morning and I had this big aha. We said, don't try to be present. Try not to be in your past, and try not to be in your future. So if you're not in your past, and if you're not in your future by default, where are you? I was so excited. I was really excited. I thought, because when you're in the past, you can do something about it, right? Unresolved situation. Because you're thinking about something, it's okay, I gotta fix that. When you're in future, you are thinking about your outcomes. So I kept a journal for 30 days. And I wrote down every time I wasn't present, I would write it down. So after 30 days, I went back and looked at my journal, and I was blown away. I was never in my past. I get along with my family. I'm divorced. I get along with my ex-wife, our family. In fact, her mother was in, I have a daughter. I already lost my son, but I have a daughter, and her grandmother, which was my ex-mother-in-law, was visiting her and said to my daughter, he says, call Azim, I've cooked his favorite meal. So my daughter called me and says, Grandma is in town and she's made your favorite meal. I knew she was in town. I said, you're kidding me, sweetheart. Because ex-mother-in-laws don't do stuff like that. She says, Dad, I'm not kidding you. She really has made your favorite meal. And over dinner she told me, I wanted to acknowledge you because you forgave Tariq's killer. I too have been able to forgive him. It's amazing how this ripple effect works. So I told the Dalai Lama, I said, I'm never in the past. I'm always in the future because I'm an investment banker, I'm a strategist, I'm always planning. How do I give the future? I'm halfway there. So he said to me, he said, he says, even sometimes I'm in the future too. He says, the Chinese in Paris. He says, we go to this, we have this meeting with my minister, and I can't sleep. And I'm talking to my house chamber about all of this stress that I have. And they get mad because I'm sharing secrets with my house chamber. But he says, I have to talk to somebody, otherwise I can't sleep. He's such a priceless human being. He says, but here's my advice to you. He said, the Buddhists have a lot of knowledge about detachment. And he said, what I would do is, it's okay for you to have an outcome, because if you don't have a desire, you can't get to the next level. You need to have a desire, and a very burning desire to go out there and do it. But add the language, and if you don't get the outcome you want the outcome that is the highest good for you, for the person, and the universe. So if you get a different outcome than the one you want, have faith that the outcome you actually got was better than the one you wanted. Wow. So there's a chapter in that book which was inspired by this Dalai Lama conversation. It's called The Dance Between Desire and Detachment. It's a dance. So now I practice that to be able to let go of the future so that you can get more time in the present. So when you're a cellular leader, and I'll tell you the story about Microsoft because I think it's an important story because I gave a talk to an organization called TIDE, which is the Indus Entrepreneurs. And it's basically made up of all of the Silicon Valley Indian entrepreneurs because they've done very well in technology. And they have an association. So they invited me because I have some roots in India as well as a Persian Indian in my roots. And also invited Vijay Vashi, who is from India, who was the 25th employee at Microsoft. So he talked about the success of Microsoft. I talked about my story at the foundation. In the Q&A, somebody asked Vijay, said, well, what are some of the things that made Microsoft successful? And he said 3 things. He says, first, we created an enabling environment for our scientists to go out there and innovate. We've spent millions of dollars chasing ideas. And if they make an honest mistake, we do what Mr. Kanisa talked about, we forgive them. We don't fire them, because if they fire them, they're not going to go out there and try and create something that is out of the box. Now, we did make clear that we don't forgive the same mistake twice. And we don't forgive stupid mistakes. The third thing he said is we do the mundane well. There are many stories. I mean, think that forgiveness may not have a part of the corporate world. In my change management model, as a cellular leader, the first module is exactly about practicing forgiveness. Because what you have is whenever there's people, there's conflict. Does that make sense? Yes. Conflict between father, son, mother, daughter, husband, wife. Conflict. Now, most leaders don't like conflict. They want to either sweep it under the rug or not acknowledge it. If you're a cellular leader, you'll love conflict. Because in conflict, there's the opportunity to create love and unity, as exemplified by my relationship with the grandfather. And I've known him 17 years, we're still together. And we have this love for each other, I can't even put it in words, but if you see us together, you see that we have this little bond. And I would never have met him had Tony not killed Target. I love symbology and I love ritual. And in Chinese symbology, the symbol for crisis, it essentially is a conflict of major proportions. The symbol for crisis is both the symbol of danger and opportunity. Because in a crisis, the danger is to create more crisis. The opportunity is to create love and unity. So we teach in the corporate world that when there is conflict, that if you are a cellular leader, you want to address the conflict. And the process is you acknowledge the white elephant nobody wants to talk about. You compassionately confront. You forgive. And you redeem. Redemption piece is very important. Just to say, I made a mistake and I'm sorry. No. Because when I forgave Tony, I met him when he was 19, I told him, not only do I forgive you, I want you to know, when you come out, there's a job waiting for you at the Tariq Khalisa Foundation. And that was a transformative experience for him and for me. Because prior to me visiting him, he would tell Ples, he lived with Ples, so he calls Ples Daddy. He would say, Daddy, I'm not going to make it in prison. I'm going to die in prison. Because he's a young, charismatic, good-looking person in an adult prison. Now, prisons are zoos. After I forgave him, and Ples told me, as you walked away from the table, because Ples stayed behind, Tony told Ples, that's a very special person. I killed his one and only son, and he has forgiven me. He's also offered me a job when I come out. I'm not worthy of his forgiveness. But you know what? I'm going to be worthy. He's 31 years old today. At 22, he aced his GED in prison at the 94.5% percentile. He's 2/3 of his way to his first degree in child psychology. He reads 5 books a month. He's now writing poetry. And we have footage of him when he was 14. And you could see the gangbanger, and today comes across as a monk. This is what conflict can do for you. And people say, well, how do you compassionately confront? This is not very hard. You ask 5 questions. What happened? What were your thoughts and feelings when that happened? What are your thoughts and feelings now? Because they're working in the post, right? The proper conflict. Who was harmed and why? How do we make it better? Because we can always make it better. So forgiveness is something that is not very well understood in our culture. Because there's this connotation that by me forgiving Tony, what I'm really saying is what he did is okay. No. I'm not condoning his behavior. He's paying, he has a much larger sentence than I would like. I'm trying to get him out early because I think he would be more useful to society working in the foundation than working in prison. I couldn't do it under our government. But with Jerry Brown, I think there's more hope because Edmund Brown, which was his father, was the governor of California and wrote a book on clemency. I just got a big award in Pasadena from the Western Justice Center. Started by Judge Dorothy Nelson. She's in her 80s. And she says, you know what, I know the Brown family. I want to create a meeting for you. Because the governor can commute his sentence. So we look forward to the day when Tony can join us. But that's the power of the redemption piece. That if you take the position that if there is conflict, and if there is conflict, and if you go through these steps, that you can take this conflict and create unity, and through the process of redemption. And to me, I'm looking at redemption. I mean, forgiveness is huge, don't get me wrong. But I'm looking at redemption as maybe one of the biggest motivators in the corporate world or even in personal lives to convert conflict into unity. Maybe it's my fifth book, I'm going to write more about that. Because redemption, because we've all harmed people, and we've all been harmed. And the problem is when I see in my work that most of us are in resentment for what has been done to us, or in guilt for what we've done. So I recognize that I didn't want to go through life on crutches, and I lost my one and only son. I know many of you feel sorry for me, but there's no quality going through life as a victim. When my son was alive, I had a full life, and was a successful, I speak half a dozen languages, I traveled the world, I stayed in nice hotels, and made good money, had a good social life, and then I had no life. I have a very full life now. It's different. I always have an investment banker who's now a social worker. But I look at that as a step up in my career. Right?
Yes.
If that was about making money, this is about saving lives of children.
Yes.
Much more fulfilling,
Yeah.
much more meaningful. But the point I want to make here is that I recognize that being a victim, I promote their quality of life. Does that make sense? The second thing that I realize that if I stay angry and in resentment, who am I hurting? Mandela didn't write this quote, but he made it famous. He said, resentment is like drinking poison and waiting for your enemy to die. But think about it. Why have your psyche, your meager, important real estate of your psyche occupied by somebody who's harmed you? Why not forgive so love and joy can live in that real estate? It's a selfish act. Good for you. Tony has his own journey. And he has to go through life knowing that he killed an innocent, unarmed human being. That's hard to do. I've forgiven him, but it's hard for him to forgive himself. I'm helping him do that. And the more he is able to redeem himself by joining his grandfather and helping other kids not make the same mistake, he will be able to forgive himself. Does that make sense?
Yes.
It's important that you understand that forgiveness is something you do for yourself, but it can have a very similar impact on the other side. One of the books that my buddy here, Rich Mayer, in the back, sponsor called Beyond Forgiveness, Reflection of Atonement. There are 15 authors, I'm one of them. It's based on this piece about atonement. Because we don't atone. But the Jews have a special holiday about Yom Kippur. They have atonement. So this atonement is about redemption. It's about looking at this, we are in the new year. So looking and seeing what harm we've caused and how do we atone. And just to say, ask for your forgiveness not enough, you've got to change your behavior. You've got to go back in life and be productive. So I went into this deep introspection after 9/11. And what came out of this is this quote, which has become the basis of my fourth book, which is called The Road Back to Peace. It's also my peace formula. It goes like this: sustained goodwill creates friendship. It starts there. Now that ought to be obvious, right? You don't make friends by bombing them. You make friends by extending goodwill. So sustained goodwill creates friendship. Sustained friendship creates trust. Sustained trust creates empathy. Sustained empathy creates compassion. Sustained compassion creates peace. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So it's goodwill, friendship, trust, empathy, compassion, peace. When people ask me, how do you extend goodwill to the person who murdered your child? I tell them you do that through forgiveness. As it's evident, it worked for me, it worked for my family. What is miraculous, it worked for him, and it worked for his family. It worked for you and your family, you and your family, you and your family, you and your family. It can work for Israel and Palestine, North and South Korea, Afghanistan, Iran, and Iraq. It can work for the United States of America. we can work on the planet. So let me leave you with this thought, my sisters and brothers. I believe peace is possible. How do I know that? Because I am at peace. Thank you very much.